Have you ever wondered how one of the most violent forms of wrestling found a home in Britain? Today, British deathmatch wrestlers compete all over the world. Japan, America, Germany, and some are regarded among the very best in the business, but it wasn't always like that. In fact, there was a time when deathmatch wrestling barely existed in Britain. Hello everyone, I'm Josh Faulkner, the wrestling comedian. Before we get into it, make sure you like the video and drop me a follow. This is the story of British deathmatch wrestling. When people think of British wrestling, they usually picture something completely different. World of sport, rounds, technical wrestling, Johnny Saint, Marty Jones, Rollerball Rocco, William Regal. Not fluorescent light tubes, barbed wire, thumbtacks, broken glass, or rivers of blood. For decades, British wrestling was built on technique rather than violence. If you wanted to watch death matches, you looked to Japan. Modern deathmatch wrestling really began in Japan during the late 1980s. Atsushi Onita and Frontier Martial Arts Wrestling completely changed what professional wrestling could look like. Exploding barbed wire, landmines, fire, spectacle. It wasn't simply about hurting each other, it was about creating drama unlike anything fans had ever seen before. Then, companies like Big Japan Pro Wrestling pushed the style even further, whilst in America, promotions like ECW introduced fans to hardcore wrestling, before CZW and IWA Mid-South developed their own brutal take on the deathmatch style. Meanwhile, Britain watched from afar. Throughout the 1990s, British wrestling fans discovered Japanese deathmatches through VHS tape trading, then DVDs, then the internet. Suddenly, fans were watching Atsushi Onita, Mitsuhiro Matsunaga, Jun Kasai, Nick Mondo, Necro Butcher, and Nick Gage. The appetite was growing, but there was one problem. Nobody in Britain was building a dedicated deathmatch scene. There were hardcore matches, street fights, the occasional weapons match, but genuine deathmatch wrestling remained incredibly rare. That's where one name appears again and again: Isaac Iceman Harrop. Speak to many fans and wrestlers involved in the British deathmatch scene and they'll tell you the same thing. Iceman didn't invent deathmatch wrestling. Japan had already done that, but he is widely regarded as the man who gave Britain its own deathmatch identity. When very few promoters wanted anything to do with ultraviolence, Iceman embraced it. When crowds were tiny, he kept wrestling. When many people dismissed deathmatches as nothing more than blood and violence, he believed Britain could build its own scene. It wasn't glamorous. Shows were often held in small venues. Crowds were modest. There were no television contracts, no streaming platforms, no social media algorithms, just passionate wrestlers and passionate fans trying to build something different. Slowly, things began to change as British independent wrestling exploded during the 2000s. Deathmatch wrestling started growing alongside it. The internet made international wrestling easier to watch than ever before. British wrestlers began traveling overseas, learning from Japan, learning from America, then bringing those experiences home. Britain was no longer simply watching deathmatch wrestling, it was creating its own version. Then came a new generation. Jimmy Havoc helped introduce a wider audience to ultra-violence through Progress Wrestling and became one of Britain's biggest independent stars. While many fans knew him for hardcore wrestling, he helped open the door for people to discover dedicated deathmatch wrestling. Then came wrestlers prepared to take that style to another level. Drew Parker, Clint Margera, Big Joe, and many others. These weren't simply wrestlers using weapons, they became genuine international deathmatch competitors. Drew Parker achieved what few thought was possible by winning Big Japan Pro Wrestling's Deathmatch Survivor Tournament, and later becoming BJW Deathmatch Heavyweight Champion. Big Joe established himself as one of Britain's toughest exports, competing across Europe, America, and Japan in promotions including GCW and Big Japan, earning respect as one of the country's premier modern deathmatch wrestlers. Clint Margera built a reputation across Britain and internationally as another key figure in the scene, helping British deathmatch wrestling gain credibility far beyond our shores. For the first time, British wrestlers weren't travelling overseas to learn, they were travelling overseas because they were among the best. Promotions also evolved. Death matches were no longer the occasional attraction at the end of a wrestling show. Entire promotions built their identities around ultra-violence. Tournament weekends became annual traditions. International stars flew into Britain. Fans travelled from across Europe to attend. Something that would have sounded impossible 20 years earlier. Perhaps the biggest change was perception. For years, deathmatch wrestlers were dismissed. People assumed they couldn't wrestle, that they simply hit each other with weapons, but the best deathmatch wrestlers proved exactly the opposite. Many had outstanding technical ability. The violence only worked because the wrestling underneath it was believable. The best deathmatches tell stories. They're about resilience, emotion, sacrifice, and survival. Today, British Deathmatch Wrestling has never been stronger. British wrestlers headline tournaments across Europe, compete regularly in America, Japan, Germany, and all over the world. But perhaps the most remarkable part of this story is that it has become a family legacy. The man widely credited with helping build Britain's deathmatch scene, Isaac Iceman Harrop, is now watching the next generation carry that legacy forward. His son, Jack Harrop, has become one of Britain's rising deathmatch wrestlers, forging his own reputation while continuing a family connection to the style that his father helped establish in this country. Father and son have even shared the ring together. It's a reminder that what began as one man's passion has become something much bigger, a wrestling style, a community, and now a family tradition. But I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on British Deathmatch Wrestling? Do you think the Iceman deserves to be recognised as the father of British Deathmatch Wrestling? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more wrestling stories, opinions, and laughs, you know what to do. And remember, I'll see you on the next one.